The Articulate Coven is the original, unofficial podcast and fan community for Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire and Anne Rice's Immortal universe from AMC and AMC+. Welcome to The Articulate Coven. We are your hosts. I'm Joel.
I'm Ashley.
And we are The Articulate Coven. Ashley, let's just imagine that you find yourself with a 1,000-page novel. It's the first in an expansive trilogy. Your main character is actually joined by her 12 immediate ancestors as co-protagonists who we watch live out like this long-term plan by their family familiar spirit, who may be a little more than he seems, actually. He's got his own backstory, too, but you know what? We'll save that for the second novel. We also introduce you to a centuries-old secret organization that studies and seeks to understand the paranormal, has proof of vampires, immortals, ghosts, demons, psychics, and more. Finally, there's an interesting male protagonist that's not part of either of the above stories, and yet he totally is and always has been. You got 8 episodes of a TV show to adapt that first book for TV and launch not one TV franchise, mind you, but hopefully several, including at least one based on that secret organization. So, of course, the thing you do with your 5th episode is to set up a bottle episode where you put your 3 central characters in one building, you light the house on fire, you stab your combined male protagonist. That's the way that you set everything up.
Sure.
It makes perfect sense when you think about it.
Sure. But oddly, what's so strange is that the beginning of this episode is the part that I liked the most. Oh, this episode's all over the place.
Here's the thing. It's so, and we're going to get to all of it, by the way. We are the Articulate Coven. We are your original fan community and podcast for Anne Rice's Immortal universe, is brought to you by AMC. Particularly right now, we're talking about Mayfair Witches, the season 1, episode 5 episode entitled The Thrall. Although if you go back to our old episodes, we've talked about Interview with the Vampire. We've talked about the movies made on Anne Rice's books in the past, and
yes,
as well as the first, 5 Vampire Chronicles. We've talked about the first Mummy book, and we've got more coming soon. So tonight we're going to talk about the Thrall, and we're going to get right into it because there is a lot. This is a big episode in some ways. And yet, that's what I find myself with, is my little rant that I wrote, because honestly, this is an amazing book, and this is an amazing opportunity to adapt it. I've said before on this show, we're not going to see another adaptation of this, at least for a decade. Honestly, probably not in my lifetime.
Right.
So this is our shot to get this done. And by God, they've just wasted so much time, plot, interesting characters for new and occasionally interesting developments. This episode is beautiful. It's honestly a pretty good episode of television if you divorce yourself from all the subject matter or the source material. But I'm just super frustrated by what's not in this show.
It's so someone in our Facebook group asked, and very validly, because we rant and we were raving about how fantastic Interview was, and we supported so many of the changes. We pretty much supported all of the changes that they made to that, and why this feels so different. And I think so much of it just comes down to it. I think it's the storytelling feels disjointed and discombobulated in a way that makes me afraid that these showrunners aren't as invested in the source material as the showrunners of Interview. So some of the changes that they make aren't quite as thought out as the changes that were made to our vampires. And I think that has a lot to do with it. And I also think we discussed this, I said this once before, we're not as comfortable with the source material, so we can't maybe sometimes see in depth. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe they know way more about this than we do, and we're just not really seeing the depth of the changes they're making. I don't know, but I think what worries me is it feels more like the first scenario. So I think that's why why we are struggling against this one so much, because it's starting to feel like it's like that Game of Thrones feeling where you're like, no, don't, why aren't you telling this part? Why did we go there instead? It's like that, like knowing what was written, knowing what's still to come, and and knowing that changes sometimes they're making are making the future storytelling difficult.
Yes. Yes, I very much agree with that. I'm going to get to a positive as quickly as I can because this comes very early in the episode. I mentioned this previously when we were talking about the book, but Cyprian calls out, we've got a little, I think, a foreshadowing of something that's going to come in the show itself. Cyprian says that he loves snow in a place where there can never be snow. We are absolutely getting snow at Christmas time for the big finale of this show. Now, whether that's this season or next season, I don't know. Which, by the way, we haven't mentioned it, Ashley. We did officially get a confirmation on season 2 renewal for this show this last
And guys,
week.
I'm excited. I'm pumped for it. Like, do not think that I am like we said, we're not to the point of hate watching or anything like that. But and I'm here for it. I'm having a good time watching it. I like when I can let myself go a little bit. I can really enjoy it, which I really got into this episode a few times. It wasn't as good on the second viewing, I felt like, which that's disappointing. But my first viewing in particular, especially the beginning, I was like, hell yeah, this is wild. I don't know what's up or down right now. I'm so confused.
Yes, I'm excited for season 2 as well, and I don't know now. You mentioned this last episode. We don't know now whether it seems so obvious previously before we started watching the show where they would break season 1. And now I have no clue where this thing is going to get to by the end of season 1 and moving into season 2.
Yeah, I feel like we're maybe like 300 pages into the book right now, and we're more than halfway through our episode. So it's like, ooh, they're either going to rip through some storyline real effing quick here, or we're going to stop way before we expected to.
Yes. Anyway, there we go. A positive. Cyprian called out the snow, and I think that's the writers calling out the snow, which happens in the book. It's like a really big moment in the book. It is something that does happen in New Orleans. I lived in New Orleans for 3 years, happened twice while I lived there. So it absolutely happens. And boy, yeah, there you go. Yay, Miss Spalding. I'm excited for what you've done here. Please give me snow. Please don't break my heart on that one. But Ashley, we're here again. We're 10 minutes into the episode before the characters wake up and realize that they're in a Groundhog Day scenario at all. And again, when you know how much ground there is left to cover and how much of these characters and these storylines and these histories we've yet to even crack open at all, it just feels like wasted time.
And it's weird because within the episode itself, they're teasing more and more of the backstory as we go. We're getting hints dropped about, we've had Julian mentioned, we've had Anthem mentioned, we've seen Stella's name on the tombstone. We're getting all of these references. Stuart Townsend's in this episode. So we're getting all these whispers and hints of this really in-depth history that we know these characters and this family has. And so it's like, what are we doing? You're going to tell us the story or you're not, or you're gonna, or you're not.
Let me ask you a question, Ashley. Other than just like TV watcher anxiety reasons, why would Cyprian carry the knife around after they discover it? She finds the knife, brings it up to him and says, "Oh my God, I think I might have stabbed you." And he says, "Well, let me touch it. There's no reason to guess." And he says, "No, it was Carlotta. Carlotta tried to kill you. I got in the way." And then he carries the knife around for the rest of the episode. I kept going,
maybe for protection?
What's he going to do?
Maybe for protection? I don't know. Because the crazy Carlotta's running around that place. No, you definitely cannot stab Lasher. Okay. But crazy Carlotta's still running around, and they don't know where she is.
That's a good point. You're right. They don't know where Carlotta is.
So I'd rather
later in the episode. That makes a little sense.
Someone who's not actively dying of sepsis should probably have the knife instead.
Yeah, right. I just kept thinking, like, are they carrying it around because they think they need to test it or something? Like, it's not. You didn't get bit by a dog. You don't need to test for rabies.
Is it magic? Is it a magic knife?
If you get bit by a dog, you got to collect the dog. Yeah. Well, I mean, it turns out to be a magic knife. Yes.
Yes, it does.
Well, anyway, okay. That's a good transition, Ashley. Let's talk about the level, and we've talked about this a little bit. Our fans, our listeners in the Facebook group especially, and the Discord group to a lesser degree, which, by the way, if you want more conversation about these shows in this universe, check out the links in our show notes for our Facebook group if you're a Facebook user, or if not, our Discord community. Both have active conversations about the books and the shows and other media that you might be interested in, all sorts of fun stuff going on there. But a lot of them have been talking about the level of paganism, the level of actual witchcraft, quote unquote, the level of, spellcraft that seems to be at play in this world of the TV show that really just frankly isn't in the books at all. It's like Anne didn't do that much research into witchcraft, honestly. Like the history of witch trials are sort of brought in there a little bit, and quite a bit of like British folklore and mythology, but basically none, honestly.
But really only as it relates to our witches.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and really only as it relates to our Mayfair witches. Like it's not like a generalization of like, here's generally some history about witches. It's not like that at all. It's like very specific to what our Mayfair witches are going through. So yeah, it's interesting. I think maybe that's to appeal to non-book readers. I think maybe it's to appeal to that sort of like to give people an expectation of like of some sort of like witchiness, as we
100%. I was thinking in my head, this is they want to appeal to the discovery of witches, folks, right? And they want to appeal to the people my age who watched The Craft when they were in high school.
Absolutely, yeah.
More than that, honestly, Ashley, it occurred to me last night, it's a little bit of the Doctor Strange crowd, right? Like people expect a little bit of fireworks and sparkly kung fu from our witches. And if you had only these like psychic powers, which is really how these witches are presented in the books, that might just not play for it's kind of like we argued about our vampires being messy in Interview with the Vampire, where in the book they never spill a drop of blood. But TV viewers would not get that unless you had somebody explain, these vampires always drink everything.
They're so nice and tidy.
Well, I mean...
it would look... Eventually it would look weird to us, too.
But it doesn't play right on the screen.
And it would look weird to us, too. Like, that's the thing. You think you might want that. But that would look fucking weird. It would be like, here's these vampires, like, killing people, and we don't see any blood at all, like, because they've got really good suction. I don't know. That's absurd, and it would look silly. It's cool when you read it, but I don't want to see it that way.
Also, imagine the mouth Foley noises that you'd have to come up with to
Jesus
get that
Christ.
expressed on TV. Like,
people with misophonia would freak out. That is not ASMR appropriate. That would be terrible. God.
But if you're only listening to this podcast and only watching the show, though, you should know in the books the witches just really aren't like this. You have a handful of characters in the witch series and the vampire series, and throughout Anne's books that do actual witchcraft or spellcraft, voodoo mostly. Merrick is from the voodoo tradition. So is David Talbot. Honestly, that's where he's dabbled in real magic, is from voodoo. And so that's the world that you delve into more than herbs and this sort of like Western tradition of the female witch.
Fucking hydroponic.
Even though it's a book about female witches.
Hydroponic herb garden in your basement. What the fuck? When we that was wild to me. That just like, and I didn't even really catch it until the second.
There's so many levels.
Oh, it's so great. But yeah, I mean, I had a good time watching this episode. I was really like, when I watched it the first time on Friday. I watched it again this morning, and I was like, I had a really good time last night. When I watched this, I'm kind of excited to watch it again. And then it just didn't play as well on my second viewing, and I was kind of disappointed. But this one really held my attention more than some of the other ones have. I really felt like they were building some good tension throughout this one. I care a little bit more about Sip now than I did. I still don't know that I care much about Rowan.
I care more about Cyprian too, although I had a very strong question that just kept reverberating in my mind. Why couldn't he have just been Michael Curry? Why couldn't we have met a Michael who met his Aaron Leitner or whoever brought him into the organization, who did that earlier, before Michael went and met Rowan. In the books, they come together first, and then the Talamasca meets Michael. But what would have happened if they had met Michael and the Talamasca was what dried Michael out from his alcoholism? That could be Cyprian. I understand the race change, honestly.
Oh yeah, I'm happy with that.
Like, I want to make this cast more diverse,
please.
But that doesn't need to change his name. There are a ton of African Americans with Irish descent, in particular in New Orleans. Someone who grew up in New Orleans, who's generationally, and of Cyprian's age. Again, anyway. I wonder why you needed to change it. Why did this have to be a wholly new character? And this episode in particular played that out. I do care more about him now than I do before. I do think there are interesting things to be found in his backstory. Like we mentioned last week, he references other people's memories are cleaner. Boy, there's something in this guy's past. Odette is such a big character here, right? And Odette doesn't exist in the books. But it just makes me think, why couldn't this have been Michael, right? Just like we got a different Louis in the show than Louis in the books, and we loved that Louis more, honestly.
Right. I kind of have a thought about it, but it's real spoilery. So I don't know if I should say it now or if I should wait it.
This episode.
Yeah, I have a theory on that.
That just at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a minute. So this episode, though, brought to bear something else and they mentioned it a couple of different times, specifically in the post-episode insider part. Spalding mentions that Lasher has powers in this house that he has nowhere else on Earth. Then also, we get some moments with Stuart Townsend, for instance. When Stuart Townsend appears to Sip, when he finally recognizes Sip and sees him and says, "Oh, you fell in love with her, didn't you?" He doesn't like that. "Don't die in this house."
Don't die in this house.
Okay.
Oh, that was so scary.
For a minute. Stuart Townsend is from the books. I don't believe in the books, though, that Lasher is the reason that he died, which is what's implied by that exchange that they have. In the books, I'm pretty sure Carlotta kills him.
Yeah, I think it's
rolls
more
him up in a rug.
Yeah, he ends up in a rug in the attic. I'm pretty sure is where he ends up. And yeah, Carlotta definitely killed him.
So this house.
But I love the idea of like, you know how I love this house, and I love it I need it to be a character, and that really came through in this episode, big time for me. Yes,
it did come through in this episode, and I honestly, this is one of those changes that I think I can get behind. It's a little alarming when you first hear the book. In the book, the house is not magic. It's not a magic house. It's full of bad memories. It's been full of powerful psychics for generations, right? There is a familiar spirit that lives in it, but the house itself is not magic. Here, clearly, the house is some sort of center of power in some way. And I gotta tell you, I gotta think I'm here for it. It's a little bit American Horror Story more than Anne Rice, but I don't think I mind it, honestly.
I am totally here for it. If poltergeisty shit, I'm here for it. I really, really like it. I like a haunted house. I love a haunted house. And I love this house in this story. It just, to me, I know it wasn't supernatural within the book, but the way it was so Anne and her beautiful way with words just described, and how lovingly Rowan spends time fixing it back, and she and Michael spend time fixing the house back, making it, restoring it to its glory days, because it's fallen into such disrepair, and it becomes such a thing in the book. And I am really, really excited about the way that they're exploring that in the show.
Speaking of haunted house, Aunt Millie. We get an Aunt Millie reveal here. Okay, so we have joked about...
Oh my God, she's a ghost!
Yeah, we've joked about this. She hasn't been named so far in the show, really. She hasn't been introduced to anyone. We've talked about, like, what's the deal here? It's kind of weird. Like, is this even... Are they trying to play it like this is Carlotta's girlfriend and not her sister? What's going on? No, she's a ghost.
She's a fucking ghost! I loved it. I was like... Oh, that's so scary. That's so scary. There were some legit creepy things in this.
This is quite creepy. None of the Mayfairs do this, though. It breaks a lot of what the whole point of this is supposed to be for, at least as laid out in the books. In particular, here's my question, and I'm assuming we're going to get answers to this. Why in Jesus' name, literally in this case, why would this Carlotta especially allow or help her sister to stay in corporeal form? Like, what are you trying to do other than showcase, spookiness? I'm wondering what is Spalding getting at, and I'm hoping she's got an answer for that, because the Carlotta that you've built here, this fundamentalist Carlotta, would not help hold her sister in the real world. Like, she would she would want her to go on to the afterlife.
But I think she would, unless she's doing it because she can't be without her. She doesn't want to be completely alone in that house. With Tedrah, she doesn't want to be completely alone in this world.
Him.
And with him, she's already, kicked Cortland out. She's, they're by themselves in that place. And I kind of feel like it's, because she has to be doing it on purpose, because Millie says, I can't, like, what does she say? I can't hold on without her, or something like that. Like, she can't stay by herself.
I can't hold on without her.
Yeah, so Carlotta's clearly keeping her there, helping to keep her there. And maybe it's just because Millie wants to stay. Maybe she's afraid to go. I don't know, but I really liked it. I thought that was kind of a cool change. And it does make it feel a little more creepy, a little more scary, a little more horror movie-ish. And I'm here for that too. I like that vibe. I don't mind this being creepy and scary. It should be.
And like we talked about in the book episode, especially the characters of Michael and Aaron in some cases being kind of interchangeable, and you could see how they could quash those two characters together. It's definitely the same thing here. Millie in the books plays basically zero role.
Right.
And I'm like literally racking my brain right now to think of what is her end in the novel. After Carlotta dies, what happens to Millie? And I literally cannot remember what happens.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
I remember the scene between Carlotta and Rowan vividly, but I don't know what happens after Carlotta's death, honestly.
Does she stay in the house? I think she might just stay in the house with Rowan and Michael. But I can't remember
maybe
exactly.
so, because Michael's aunt also moves in, right?
Yeah,
so maybe maybe Michael's aunt and Millie become
It's like old ladies club on the porch,
Okay, let's talk about costuming here, because this is an ongoing thing for us. Here's one where they nailed it. Rowan's dress. Rowan's dress is great. Good job costuming.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. She looks great in clothes. Like, she looks amazing in clothes. I'm really glad they took her out of those fucking brown pajamas. Yeah, she looks fantastic in this episode. And Sip looks good in this episode. I mean, he's half dead most of the time, but, like, he looks pretty hot in this episode. But they're doing our guy, Lasher, so dirty.
Yes. Okay, so I didn't hate his tux when he first shows up. But then throughout that scene, you're right, it's like he doesn't fit in his clothes or something. And in particular, okay, so I've heard people say that he's not attractive.
That isn't true!
In Boardwalk Empire... Listen, in Boardwalk Empire, he is literally disfigured. He's a war veteran, and part of his face is missing. He wears like a porcelain mask to cover his wound on his face, snaps on with his glasses. He is still fucking smoking in that show. Many women think so, and it shows up. Like, he's a very attractive man. As we've talked about, he comes from a dynasty of Hollywood lovely, lovely folks, okay?
Yeah.
Him and all his people are good-looking people. The haircut that they do to this dude and the clothing that they hang on him are doing him no favors. And yet still, this Lasher-Rowan scene, after she says goodbye, she tells Lasher to get rid of Sip and, send him to safety, and they're alone in the house. When she puts on the dress and Lasher's in his tux and they're wandering around together, they go into the outside, they do the fireflies, they resurrect the fox, all the things. That is such good work. I think it's probably the best overall scene in the whole show so far. It fits their characters. It fits what happens in the book. It fits the way that Lasher courts his witches.
Yes.
And the nature of Rowan's interest in him, particularly the reviving of the fox, the connection to the fireflies, this idea of amplifying her own ability to give and take life. That's what Rowan finds seductive from Lasher, using him as like an amplifying device for her own power. And that's what he's selling in all of these scenes.
Yeah. Yeah. It really, and their chemistry really picked up in this episode for me as well. And it's like, I think someone in our group mentioned, like, she can't just be running around looking scared and breathless all the time. Like, we cannot have this. It can't keep happening. Some things have to change. So she can't just be afraid of Lasher. She has to start feeling like she can either she's into him or she's into him, and she's also trying to figure out how to fight him. But really, taking again, like we say, her complete lack of agency. This episode, it felt like they're trying to grab hold of that a little bit more. I'm really hoping that carries on with the next episode as well. I'm not sure because, we go from an episode where it's just basically her and him for at least half of it. And then we're going to have, a house full of witches next episode, according to the scenes ahead. So who knows how much individual agency Rowan's going to have in this at all. But at least she's surrounding herself with powerful women.
Listen, I am so worried about this witch hunter storyline. The only thing that has me excited is the fact that there are a lot of really cool women actors that are going to show up in that scene. And then also characters like, Tessa, for instance, and JoJo that we like. Like, there are, I think, going to be characters here that I will find interesting. It just doesn't have anything to do with this book story.
No, it really doesn't.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
And again, it could be like, this could be a way of reaching out and kind of reaching out to that expanded audience, maybe having storylines that feel familiar, like a modern day witch hunt, would be appealing to non-book readers. I don't know.
The Lasher Rowan stuff, you're right though. It was good. It's a little sexy. It's a little spooky. It's a lot magical. It felt to me like it came from someone else's adaptation of this. Like they stole a scene out of somebody else's script, shoved it into the middle of theirs. Anyway, whoever wrote that, I hope they write some more episodes in season 2. Lori Yancey in our Facebook group though had the quote of the week for me.
Oh God, yes.
Perfect, so I wanted to share it with everybody. Whoever Lestated up Sam Reed needed to be the person who Lashered up Jack.
Yes. And please and thank you. Y'all have a conversation about it. My God. Because he is hot. He's objectively hot. That's an objectively good-looking man. I don't know.
Yeah, both of these guys. We talked about how perfect the casting of Jack Houston was for Lasher. It was the number one thing that I was excited about for the show. It's not him. It's costuming and makeup and hair that have failed him. Honestly, I really feel that way. The writing's not doing him a lot of favors, but those 3 departments I think could be doing him some, even without the writing. Okay. Why is Sip going to be in trouble if his sister is found in this apartment?
I don't know. Is it like
the
your
Talamasca
family
doesn't own this place?
It's so
Sip
that was so weird.
I use this as a safe house sometimes. This isn't. This is his place.
Right. It feels like his apartment. Like he lives there. He's very comfortable there, and his sister comes to visit him there. So obviously he fucking lives there. Yeah, it was weird. It was weird. Like,
yeah, right, exactly. And
she's not allowed to know. She obviously doesn't know what he does, but it's like something he would be in trouble. Like, that's so fucking weird. I don't know. I didn't get that either. That was very strange.
And the implication was like maybe she'd be mind wiped or disappeared or whatever, was sort of the way that he was like you'll be in trouble too. Anyway, I don't know. I don't get that. Hopefully they'll explain that. Again, it's one of those things that like when Rollin Jones and his team with Interview pick up the Talamasca, how are they going to respond to moments like that? I don't know. Ignore it, I suppose, sometimes.
Well, and maybe the New Orleans office is just a fucking mess. Question, maybe the New Orleans office is just a mess and no one talks about it. They're like, well, it's a shit show down there, so.
When we get to Paris, it'll all be fine.
That's right. That's right.
Genuine question here, Ashley. What do we gain for the character of Rowan by having her kill Carlotta after an entire episode stuck in the house, as opposed to doing it at dinner at the conclusion of last episode? The way that it plays out in the novel, they come to dinner. It's supposed to be cordial. Carlotta starts kind of unloading on her, as she does in the episode. Your mother was a burden. She was Lasher's whore, etc., etc. And Rowan reaches out with her brain and kills her right there. That's how it happens in the novel. What do we gain by delaying it a whole episode and making it here Carlotta was going to kill Rowan, tried to do it with the knife, then tried to do it again by talking her into jumping off the ledge.
Well, I think part of it is to show like how at the beginning of it, she tells Lasher, I'm not going to kill her. That's not me. Even though she's been killing people all over the place and a bunch of birds, but she tells them, I'm not going to kill her. That's not me. I'm not like that. But then she has to come to terms over the course of this episode with the fact that she is like that. You know what I mean? And I think that's part of that journey, is to kind of show how to delay it shows that she has to start accepting that about herself, and that, spending this time with Lasher, and she has to understand that she's being kind of pulled in and sucked into this whole thing. So I think it is to just kind of show a bit of a transition for the character, and to give us a little bit more time to kind of build chemistry and build a relationship between these three characters that are in this bit of a love triangle.
All right,
since it's not the fucking book, we got to spend some time building up the plot line we created.
Best acting, though, of the whole season so far, and I bet it's the best acting all season long, my guess, is Beth Grant with her delivery here on I should have killed you when you were a baby.
She Bilbo Baggins that so hard. I loved it. Her face just snapped into a fucking otherworldly expression. It was so good.
I will say, so here's the thing. They have clearly set this Carlotta up to literally be Lasher's antagonist, right? She spent her entire life, effectively. She tells us that Lasher came to her when she was 8. She's now, whatever she is supposed to be in the show, 80s, 90s. She has spent 80 years fighting Lasher mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And in that battle of her life, she's been turned into the exact thing that she thinks she's fighting. She thinks Lasher is a killer, a manipulator, a user. Well, guess what? This Carlotta has used up her sisters, manipulated her family and the town around her, honestly, and killed multiple people.
Yep. I mean, when you make her, she's got to be fucking exhausted too, because she's been winning, that's the thing, is she's been fighting Lasher and then keeping Deirdre under control. She's been fucking winning. So, this is she's had a real bad, week and a half. Since that new doctor showed up, fuck, man, Carlotta's life just fell apart.
Man, okay, I have expressed my love previously for these episode insider segments, especially Roland Jones, I feel like did a really good job on it, but I like them with Breaking Bad. I like them with the HBO shows. They do this, I like
I'd love the behind the scenes
insider segments, period.
Yeah.
Here's what I don't love, though. I wish somebody would explain to Miss Spaulding what they're supposed to be for. These are supposed to be for behind-the-scenes info. What were we thinking when we did it this way? Some thoughts on why you felt the story needed to head in this direction. Maybe a little hint of where the story is going. Spaulding just basically goes, isn't this all very interesting and spooky? No, it's not really, Spaulding.
No, and I don't feel like...
She finished...
There's something about these segments that feel very, apologetic in a way. It's not being said so, but it's this is what we're giving you. Don't you love it?
She said at the end of this one, she said, "What is the next episode like? I hope the audience will wonder." Yes, Miss Spaulding, we are all in fact wondering, what will the next episode be like? Because so far we've been surprised every time out.
each and every time. I will say there's this episode had some weird ass editing in it too, some really odd editing choices, which I I always notice, but one of them made my husband laugh out loud while we were watching this earlier. And it was when they cut, like, and it didn't even make sense. I guess it was to show that she went downstairs, but she could have just walked downstairs. But it was like a cut from outside the house, and they like zoomed into the branch, and then the branch moved up. And as the branch moves up, we reveal that she's now in like the sitting room on the first floor. It was so strange.
Okay. You know what that looked like? All right, so the two references that immediately called to mind for me were, and I don't know if they did this throughout the show, but I know they did it early on. 24 used to have this like segmented framing that they would do where they would show you like multiple things at the same time in different boxes, right?
Yeah,
and then
but that
also the original Hulk movie would do this too, and the Hulk movie was trying to the Ang Lee Hulk movie with Eric Bana. They were trying to mimic comic book panels, right? Because comic book panels do this very much, where you have like something from one scene that forms the border of the panel that then leads you to another panel that is in a different place, right?
But this didn't
Absolutely
do that.
You can use it artfully. This didn't make any. No,
this
you're
didn't
right.
make any goddamn sense.
Inside, and then we show the spooky tree, and then they're inside again. And you're
and
like,
it was like a
was
swipe.
Outside?
Like it
no
was so weird.
No one's left. We can't leave.
Yeah, if you show me shit in squares because the world's going to end in 24 hours and Jack Bauer has to save it, that's fine. And don't give me some weird tree branch bullshit just to try to look artful. Lord, people maybe start paying attention to editing.
Ashley. I'm walking out of my bedroom at some point earlier this week, and Kelly asked me, she's sitting on our bed, like scrolling through her phone on something, and she goes, did you used to watch 24? And I was literally like walking out the door. I was through the door, and I stopped dead in my tracks, and I like slow turned around, and I was like, have I not told you my 24 story? And she goes, I don't want to hear your 24 story. I wanted to know if you had watched 24 before.
What's your 24 story?
So, okay, our mutual friend, Andre Constantinescu.
Oh, Andre!
What's up, Andre? Casting director extraordinaire down in Texas these days.
Genuinely
Chaos.
Just the best person.
He's working, by the way.
Best person in the world.
Amazing guy, but he's running a bunch of he's the extras casting for the Taylor Sheridan shows.
Yeah.
Oh, he's an amazing guy. Yeah,
he's great.
Yeah. Anyway, he and I were working outdoor drama in Ohio. We were doing Blue Jacket together, and it was like a Friday night. I had gone out to a party after the show and was hanging out with friends. He had gone home to watch something on TV, we had been told. We come in at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., me and our other roommate, Nick Harrison, again, a mutual friend of ours.
Yes.
Nick and I walk into Nick and I walk into the apartment, and Andre is there on the couch, and he looks at the two of us and he goes, guys, I just watched the first episode of 24.
Beep.
And I think you would really love it.
Beep.
I'll totally watch it again with you. Would you guys like to watch it now with me right now? And I was like, Andre, it's like 2:00 in the morning, man. We're gonna watch TV now. You're gonna rewatch the episode. He's like, it was really good. I think you guys will like it. I was like, all right, sure, turn it on. Ashley, the DVD, because it was back in those days, we had to rent DVDs, one DVD at a time from Blockbuster. He had the first DVD, had 4 episodes on it. We watched all 4 episodes before any of us went to sleep that night. When we woke up the next day, we immediately went to Blockbuster on our way to the site and got the next DVD and watched that the next night. We watched, I don't know, the first 2 or 3 seasons of 24. We watched it in like a weekend, basically, at night after our summer theater job.
That's so awesome.
I love those first few seasons of 24.
Oh my God,
it's
me
amazing
too.
Television, absolutely.
Well, Annie Wershing died.
I'm
died
here for
this
beep
week.
boops. I'm here for squares.
Oh my God, I'm here for beep boops.
I forgot. Yes, that's why it was.
Yeah, it's why everyone was talking about it. Yeah.
What was the actress's name?
Annie Wershing. Yeah, she was so good. Renee Walker on that show. God, she was badass. And she did one of the voices in Last of Us. She played Tess.
Yes. And see, I didn't know that. I've never played the video game. I'm very excited to get into the TV show, specifically because I've never had the right, console to play the video game. Anyway, 2 things I want to talk about before we wrap up this episode, Ashley. First and foremost, we're going to get to your spoilery contemplation about the character of Michael and the character of Cyprian and why one could not be the other. We're going to get to that in just a second. I want to wrap up, though, by talking a little bit about that season 2 renewal and what it means for the larger Immortal universe. We mentioned previously the overall executive producer has referenced they've got 3 other series in production in addition to these 2. We know Interview with the Vampire had already previously been renewed for a season 2,
right.
But that was before the big budget cuts came for AMC. So we were a little wondering, okay, well, we know we're going to get a season 2, but after that, what do we get? This season 2 was not promised. This season 2 was not guaranteed. The critical response to this show has not been as much. I think the ratings are actually a little better than Interview across the board, but it's a close thing, and the ratings for Interview were not huge on standard cable. It was really a lot about the impact that it had on AMC Plus.
Yeah, the streaming.
But I think this season 2 renewal, shows they are going to continue to put money into this investment of the Anne Rice Immortal universe. They are not pulling back from that. The budgets may scale a little bit as we move forward, and we may not get quite as fast expansion into multiple spinoffs, et cetera, but this is not going away. The budget cuts did not hurt us. I think we're going to keep moving forward.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm really glad to see it. Like I said, I was thrilled when the news dropped to only be about halfway through the season and already get a renewal for a time when streaming services are really having a bit of a struggle, trying to figure out how to offset the loss of the ad revenue that they lost from the cable channels that they're losing from their cable channels. So it is really good to see. It's very heartening. I feel really good for the future of our vamps and witches. We're going to have a good time regardless, so it doesn't have to all be as good as Interview.
Oh, I said for years, the place that we wanted to get to with the MCU, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we want to get to the place where it's like James Bond movies. You can have a bad James Bond movie, and it doesn't mean you hate James Bond now, right? They'll bring out another one in a year or two, and you'll go see that one too, because they'll make some good ones, they'll make some bad ones. Same thing with Star Trek movies, right? There's a ton of them. There are some great ones. There are some fine ones. There are some terrible ones.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is when you have a long-running franchise.
Yeah. The even-numbered Star Trek movies are all fantastic. That's the rule of thumb right there. Yeah, because we love this world and we want to play in it. We want to get to exist in it. Even things that have been released by Marvel that a lot of people have been like, that was terrible. I'm like, whatever, I had a good time. And I think part of that too is because I've always struggled with comic books as like to be able to read and retain information from comic books. I can't, my brain doesn't do it right. And I hate it because I really want to. It's not like I'm like a snob about that as like a literary media. I think it's awesome. And I want to enjoy comic books, but I just can't. And so these movies give me a chance to enjoy those storylines in a way that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to before. And so people that look at a big ass book like The Witching Hour and are like,
literally accessibility.
Yeah, I don't want to sit down and read that. I don't have 50 hours in my, of free time to listen to this audiobook. So it gives them a chance to kind of at least get a hint of these stories. And I think that that's cool. I think that that's cool and fun. And that's what we should want for other people. But we should want that for other fans of this type of storytelling.
Absolutely. And again, like this one especially, even when it hasn't been good, and it hasn't been good in a lot of places,
right,
it has always been interesting. It continues to be interesting. So that's better than a lot of TV out there, honestly. There's
for sure
so much gray, boring nonsense.
For sure. And I think part of it was just because we were so like enamored with Interview. It does kind of sound like we're all of us are hating on this, but I think it's just kind of a comparative thing in our heads because it's all still so fresh. But we're gonna watch it. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna enjoy the second season and then watch whatever else they give us over the next 3 series.
Amen, sister. We'll be here for all of it. All right. So if you don't want any spoiler speculation, now is the time for you to dip off. Go join our Facebook community. Go join our Discord community. Go join the conversation and go watch episode 6 next week and rejoin us in our next episode. For those that do want a little spoiler conversation, a little spoiler theory discussion, here we go. We're going to dive into it. All right, Ashley, my question was, why couldn't Cyprian have just been Michael? You said you had a theory.
I have.
What do you think?
A theory, and it involves Odette. Sweet, pregnant Odette. And what if that Odette becomes the surrogate for our Lasher. That was my thought.
So here is my one big caveat for that. And it's something that we've talked about, again, spoiler for the books, but in the Tale of the Body Thief over in the Vampire Chronicles, we have a white character that transfers his consciousness into the body of a character of color. In this case, I believe he's of Indian descent, a brown-skinned man. And we talked about the fact when we talked about that book, that when you translate this onto screen, I bet they're not going to do a race change for a character. It seems sort of dicey to take a white
unseemly
character and put him in brown skin for the rest of that character's existence. Yeah. And here, too, we would then be taking Lasher and putting that into a little brown baby. And I don't know about that, Ashley.
I don't know. I don't know about that either, but I mean, I don't know. It was just something that popped into my head on my second watching this time. Because I was like, man, she's already there. She's super cute and pregnant. She doesn't connect to that baby at all. Like, she's just a surrogate. She's just a surrogate.
Yep. I do think there is definitely something to that. The fact that they've called this out as a surrogacy pregnancy, the fact that Rowan had sort of thoughts on that in a comment that was cold and distant in a way.
Yep.
Again, it all feels like foreshadowing with the snow, to come. And again, we're 5 episodes in at this point, and if
timing wise,
8, and if it's going to end in the birth of Lasher, as we supposed before this series goes, boy, Rowan's going to have a short ass pregnancy. I mean, it's short in the books too. To be
right,
fair.
it is.
She and Michael get married, and then immediately are pregnant, and then the baby grows exponentially fast too. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I think you were onto something. I think that is where this is going,
or some
which
version.
Also makes me wonder: are they going to fridge Odette? Like,
I don't know. That'd be a. Ooh.
I mean, does Odette survive the birth?
I don't know. Because really, the only reason Rowan did is because I don't know.
She's magic, and then Lasher wanted her to. Right? Exactly. Yeah. So like, she was able to stitch herself back together, and then fed on. Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. Listen, we saw some wounds magically healed in this episode, right?
Oh man, that sword getting yanked out of her body, though.
Odette down the road, if the Talamasca circles around her and helps her.
Well, and that's true. They've been established as pretty intense healers now. Like, that was wild. I was like, what the fuck is she pulling out of that? And then she pulled a whole damn sword out of herself. It's like, well, that is a very large knife.
I don't know, man. We talked about the confidence that we had that this show would deal with race in a positive way that we could be proud of, without it being just a flippant, side storyline or callously dealt with as it has been in the past. And we felt that way. We felt that confidence because of the way that it was handled in Interview with the Vampire. But boy, I don't know, man. I don't have confidence that they're going to do that right. I do think you're probably right, though. Odette is going to have a baby that's going to be a little Jack Houston.
I mean, I don't know for sure, but it sure feels. I don't know, guys. I could be totally wrong. It's just complete speculation station on my part. But I just was like, it all came surging into my brain.
You heard it here. And
that's right.
If it doesn't happen,
Thank
she was
God.
just joking. Don't even worry about it. It was just a theory.
It was a terrible idea that hopefully no one will do.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, folks, that's our thoughts on episode 5 of the Mayfair Witches, and we are very much looking forward to the next episode. As Miss Spalding said, we don't know what it's going to be like. I wonder.
I wonder what might happen.
We'll be back, though, to talk about it, though.
We will. We're going to talk all about it.
We will be back to talk about it. Even if it's witch hunters, we'll be back to talk about it, I promise. Until then, we've been your hosts. I'm Joel.
I'm Ashley.
And we are the Articulate Coven. Thanks for listening to The Articulate Coven. You can join our community on Facebook by following the links in the show notes or searching for Articulate Coven on Facebook. You can subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or at articulatecoven.com. And share us with your Anne Rice loving friends.